It's back. We're back. I think we're back. Hi, chat. How you guys doing? We, of course, had to move the show online, so with it comes some technical hurdles we have to clear. So bear with us if the stream crashes. Just keep spamming that refresh, and eventually it'll come back. We'll be okay. Right before we cut out, though, I believe we were talking about First Strike, of course, in just a couple days. That's going to be starting. I said a month. Technically true. But I realized time has flown. I think I've left my house twice in the last month because Berlin went on like serious lockdown. So, you know, it's a mess, but First Strike is almost upon us. One other thing that is almost upon us is the LVL, the Level Valorant Clash. Now, this is super cool. We actually just found out about it today. This is a regional tournament with a €1,500 prize pool going to be held between the 9th and 12th of December. I believe signups are going to go live for that very soon as well. So if you're in the DACH region, get involved. Level has, of course, run a whole lot of a couple tournaments in the past. Did one of the first what were they called? The Ignition series. That's the one. Yep, did one of those. Of course, I think G2 ended up winning that. So get your name in there and win some cash.
Yeah, absolutely. The cool thing about that as well is that DAC region's pretty stacked on talent. And if Maniac's watching, he's going to be rubbing his hands going, I'm from there. But he abandoned his team for the Twitch Invitational, so he's not allowed to talk about that anymore. But 32 teams can participate in that tournament, which, and it's not just the money that's on offer as well as a ton of Logitech gear that these guys can get their hands on. So I'd actually be pretty excited to take a look at that tournament because realistically, you're not looking at, when you go regional, in a lot of ways, you'll end up with 2-3 teams that are really good and then a mixed bag. I think you're actually going to get a pretty stacked, at least quarterfinals onwards within that tournament.
Yeah, definitely. And I think that especially with like actual First Strike going on, like it's nice to have an opportunity for teams that maybe didn't end up making the First Strike event get an opportunity to play in something else on the line too. So the Valorant Clash from Level is going to be really, really sick. I am looking forward to that. Now, one other thing, this is going to come from the Riot side in terms of like news, is they released another one of their dev diaries. And one of the things that I personally love about Riot is how open they are with the community. Like they're always talking, not just like patch changes, but like they talked about like their philosophy around like map design, and whether you agree or disagree with some of their decisions. One thing you can always give Riot is they're going to be very open with that sort of stuff. And we have a couple of clips from their latest video here. The first one actually going to be talking about Icebox. So let's go ahead and take a listen.
Hey everyone, I'm Joe Ziegler, Game Director of Valorant. It's the middle of Act 3 and our latest Agent Sky just entered the rotation, and by now, you've also battled on our newest map, Icebox. Even with all our teams still working from home, we've been updating Valorant at an insane pace since launch, all to make sure the hours you put into Valorant are worth it. This is why getting a 5th map to you earlier than expected was so important to us. Maybe it placed us off cadence, but we needed to meet your legitimate demands for more gameplay variety outside of just new agents. So the Maps team and others busted their ass to get Icebox out nearly 3 months early. As a side benefit, we'll also get to see Icebox played by Valorant pros during the First Strike event in December.
Yeah, that clip there pretty much talked about the stuff we already knew, which was they did end up rushing out, or not necessarily rushing out Icebox, but getting it out earlier than expected. 3 months, as a matter of fact, is like a very quick timeline to be able to push that out. And I think that, I mean, people have reacted pretty like polarizing about Icebox. Some people love it. A lot of pros have been vocal that they don't really like it. What are your stances on the map in general already?
So I've said it a couple of times, right? This map it's very different. You think about how some of the bomb sites are laid out, or both of them, they're very open. You're exposed to pretty much every angle whenever you're planting. It's very different to every other map within the pool, just in how the sites are designed alone, let alone the overall map design. I think it's going to be interesting. You need to push things into new directions. If this came out 3 months later, I don't think the map would look the same. I think with more time and more play testing, you would start to iron out the creases, but that's what we're going to see over time. I rather have that extra map in. I like the fact that they added in Icebox now, as opposed to waiting and leaving us with 4, because it is quite stale. That's a very small map pool to be running so many tournaments, especially now moving into First Strike. And then afterwards, into the circuit, you don't want to be in a position where there's only 4 maps, even just because it makes it really hard to veto best of 3s and best of 1s. You can't do ban all the way down because you've got 2 maps left, so there's some element of randomization to it. Some tournaments do pure randomization, which I'm completely against. So I really like the fact that now we have 5 maps. It makes the veto simpler. It'll probably get patched the same as all the maps have as time goes on, and they'll iron out some creases. But I like the fact that, you know, we're pushing the boundaries and not just taking a very strict interpretation of what an FPS map is, but trying some new things. If they don't work, they'll get changed in the future. It's not a big deal.
Yeah, I totally agree with you on that. Because I mean, I like at least having very like different varieties and types of maps. Because I almost think that it's hard to have like a really terrible map in the sense that when you're competing, like both teams are on the same map, like they're playing it, and I want to see teams like challenged and pushed to like find new ways to come up with, you know, a strategy that can lead them to a victory. And I think in the video they ended up talking a lot about that, where they want to make very different maps, and especially after the first few maps, you know, they introduced stuff like the teleporters, which is pretty revolutionary. Like outside of that, there hasn't been a ton of like pushing the envelope when I think it comes to their map design in general. So potentially with some maps in the future, we may see some larger changes there. Let's listen in on the second clip we have talking about the other maps.
I think everyone's biggest request has been, how do we get more maps? So I'm just going to start there and work backward. Our top priority is increasing our competitive map pool so that you get a diverse range of strategic experiences and settings every night. 4 maps is definitely not enough, and with 5 we're on our way, but I still don't think that's ideal. I'd say we need at least a couple more before we can feel comfortable with our map diversity relative to the needs of both competitive and casual play.
A couple more maps. That's what he says. Okay, so that would leave us at 7 maps, but he also said that he would need a couple more at least before they feel comfortable. So in my head, I'm already thinking like, could Riot try to release 2 new maps next year? Because like they're obviously going to be going really hard with the competitive scene, like maybe 2 maps next year and potentially more after that. Regardless, though, I think everyone is sort of hoping that we land around the 7 to 8 number range in terms of total maps, right?
Yeah, so we actually had some interviews with some of the guys at Riot a couple of times, and I pressed them about this, where I said, you know, the plan that we were given in a very broad statement was 6 new agents, 2 new maps every year. And I was like, every year. So, you know, 3 years from now, you still going to stick to that schedule? And they said, well, right now, yes, that's what we're going to aim for. So what I can see happening is that we have, as you're saying, 7 is like the golden number within esports. I feel like if you push it to, let's say 9, it's too many maps for everybody to get used to. You're going to see regular ones just pushed to the side that nobody plays. A rotation of 7, though, forces teams to play certain ones, because you only ban if it's a best of 3. You only ban 1 map normally. Your opponent bans 1, and then you have to play. So you have to have a deep map pool. Whereas with 9, if you did that system, you would have to have a lot of maps under your belt. So I think that a position where we have, let's say, 13, 14 maps, but there's a regular rotation, very similar to what Siege does, actually, of you have 7 maps, and then every 6 months, every year, whatever it is, they take one out and they put one of the other ones in. They rework them a little bit along the way. I think that's like the perfect system. So nothing gets stale, everything's changing. But the other aspect to that in Valorant is the new agents completely change how you play the maps without the maps having to be changed. So there is a lot, like long term, there's a lot of problems with having 20 maps in the pool, because when one new agent comes in, all of a sudden the whole game is different. So it's going to be really difficult to balance. But hell, if there's anyone to do it, I'm going to look at Riot for it, to be honest.
Yeah, honestly, it's really interesting, the idea of like adding like more maps when it comes to like new agent releases, because like I was a playtester on League of Legends, though, which has 1 map, so you only had to like think about like that many things. But of course, when you introduce like 7 new maps, that increases the amount of testing and work, and I mean even just like bug tracking, like with all these new maps. Like we've all seen like the little pixels that like Jet can get to, and it's really annoying. It just increases a lot of that workload too. So I'm sort of in the same camp where I like the idea of having some sort of rotation. My one request would be that unrated queue keeps all of them, because, you know, that would be nice to be able to go and play anything, or at least like go into customs. That sort of thing would be very nice. But in terms of those future maps, he had more to speak on it. Mr. Ziegler, let's listen in.
So let's talk about these new maps. What are our long-term goals? Our first goal is to make sure each map brings meaningful new changes that ask you to think about how you approach the space. Our 4 original maps were designed to introduce you to the complexities of Valorant, especially with so much unique agent utility to play against. Moving forward, I hope you can see how we'll continue challenging the basic concepts of map design in order to promote more diverse strategic play. With Icebox, for example, we have a map that places more emphasis on close skirmishes that demand sharper aim and quicker decision-making to win. From a configuration standpoint, the map is also more complex and interconnected than our previous maps. It's important that the opportunities presented by Icebox's layout create new ways to plan strategically and perform tactically with guns and character abilities.
I mean, everything you said there checks out. There's like A site in particular has a lot of those tight, closer corridors. B site maybe has some more openings, playing around that giant yellow container, of course. But overall, this map, I think it's one of the. Maybe I'm crazy for saying this. I actually really enjoy playing it in my own games. I just feel like it's kind of one of those like pug maps where like you can have a lot of fun on it, and with especially if you're playing someone like Omen or Jet or Raze, like there's a lot of cool things, cool angles you can get to that you otherwise wouldn't be able to. So I'm a fan personally, and everyone who hates it, y'all suck. That's my take.
Honestly, I'm more in with Icebox than I am with Ascent. That map kills me on the inside. Maybe it's because when it came out, I queued it 9 times in a row and didn't win the majority of those. But it's a little bit of a bad taste in my mouth, right? Whereas Icebox has been pretty successful whenever we've played. But yeah, I think that again, it's a map that's going to evolve over time. And one of the things, actually, you mentioned how League of Legends has one map, right? I actually find it, if you think about it, it's almost more complex to balance, or at least to me from the outside, knowing practically nothing about the game. The thing is, you've got items in that game, right? And every time that you patch an item, it's going to affect there's so many data points between the 150 odd champions that you have. They're all their abilities, how this item affects them, how this item affects other items, all that sort of stuff. So I think that for Riot, at least, trying to balance a competitive map, 6 months from now, I think Icebox is going to be where it needs to be. And that's what we've seen. Haven, Ascendant, every map that they've brought out has changed somewhat, but for the better every single time. Split was the best example of that for me. I mean, I come from Counter-Strike. We've had maps like Nuke, which were significantly one-sided for a long, long time. They didn't know how to balance it. Let me just put it that way before I go on a massive rant about how terrible that was. But Split, it was perfect. Every single request I had, looking at it myself, going, this is a bit like, does this 50-50 angle? They changed it, so it was no longer a 50-50 angle. They pulled back the spawns for each team. Like, everything about what they did to that was smart. It was what needed to be done, and it was done in a timely manner, which is something that we do not see elsewhere in the FPS world in general. I don't think any other developer has, especially with COVID taken into consideration, managed to be that efficient on that kind of time scale and know what they're doing, essentially.
Yeah, Riot, it's the 2-week patch cycle. It's super cool seeing the changes come through so quickly. And I'm honestly like, I'm trying to remember back, like, what did Split mid even look like with the big wall, Like, I can't even picture it in my brain anymore. It's kind of crazy, and like not having, the slanted area in B heaven. And the part about that like really gets me is how quickly they were able to sort of pivot that, because I played that map like probably a year before like the open beta actually ended up happening, and mid always looked the same, right? And then open beta happens, and I feel like a month in, immediately it gets changed, so it's just really cool to see like Riot be able to like find these things very quickly, or like as soon as like community starts complaining, you're gonna see a nerf or a change in some degree. But one thing that Riot, I feel like, is going to clamp down on, that people have been asking for a lot, is modding. Let's hear what they have to say.
We've also heard requests for opening up community maps or modding to trial by fire some new map experiences into Valorant. Believe me when I tell you we understand the incredible value of community-made maps. Many of our designers, artists, and engineers were recruited from that modding community. This is a discussion we have all the time. It's one Sal Garozzo, senior game designer on maps, has been a constant advocate for. But I'll be straight with you. Building a scalable community sharing platform and a set of map-making tools would take us years of development to get off the ground, not to mention a different team and even more time spent supporting it in the long term. When we weighed that against other content we could make, with the team we already have, the choice was pretty clear to focus on content. We want each new map we introduce to be fully supported and integrated within the Valorant ecosystem. A new map should feel grounded in the IP, and we need to have the ability to make balance changes or address exploits as we see them. Fine-tuning a map for competitive play is a long, complicated process. This is why we're investing all of our resources into what we know we can do, making maps.
So there it is. No modding. And this is sad because I really wanted, before I became a caster, I wanted to go into game design, and I wanted to either be a level designer or a world designer. So like I would love nothing more than to try and design a map for Valorant, but I completely understand it. And this is something that I never expected Riot to be able to put out, was to have some sort of map making tool. And at the end of the day, I would rather spend their time on making the game better instead of opening it up so other people can try.
Yeah, absolutely. I mean, one of the other things you have to take into consideration is when you add this in, you'll have a split in the community where instead of people playing unrated or comp, they'll be on these community servers playing those different versions of the map. And I think if you're actually trying to, if you're right now, you're sitting back, you're looking at where Valorant is, you're trying to figure out, how much to invest into the esports side of it, you're trying to track the growth. To split the community like that would be, in my opinion, a terrible decision, even if they could do it with a click of their fingers, at least to give access to those maps. And if you're not going to allow people to play them, but you're going to let them be made, what's really the point? The other thing as well is, like, if you're Riot, one of the things I've heard in the long term is like map selection when you're queuing competitive in particular, to be able to take out a map that you don't like. And I think, again, that's just a system of potentially splitting queues, making queue times longer. And at the moment, it doesn't really make sense. I know people want it, and in an ideal world, you would have it. But you really have to think about it from the publisher's perspective of what their goal is, how they're collecting data, and what they're aiming to do. And do these things currently make sense to do? And as well, just a small note, I love how like open Riot are, and the dev diaries, the patch notes, everything. Like I read them and I actually understand, even if I'm like, I read the patch itself, I'm like, oh, what are they trying to achieve by changing Viper's wall, let's say, for example, and then, oh, this is what they're trying to achieve. They literally wrote it underneath. That's fantastic to have that level of transparency with a developer.
Yeah, you love Riot's transparency. I love your brain. Like, okay, so we haven't actually discussed these topics before, and let me explain this. Earlier, when you were talking about like the map design, like I was gonna bring up Split, and then you brought up Split, and then as soon as you said like splitting the pool, I was like, oh, I'm gonna bring up like why Riot won't let you like deselect maps you don't want to queue for, and then you just do it. So you know what? I like it. Good job. Let's move on to esports updates. Let's do it. The Valorant Champion Tour has just been announced just yesterday or 2 days ago. I can't keep it all straight, but it's kind of a crazy that already just 1 year, less than a year after the game's launch, we have First Strike coming together in December, and next year we have 3 different tournament structures, effectively all in the same thing. We have Valorant Challengers, Valorant Masters, and Valorant Champions. Now, at the end of all of it, what it ends up looking like is Challengers is sort of like the qualifier. It's online. Anyone can sort of enter, a lot similar to how people tried to qualify into First Strike this time around. Whereas Valorant Masters is going to be more looking like a major that you might be used to in other titles.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, exactly. I think the idea of Challengers into Masters into a Worlds is something that I haven't seen too much from where I come from, but it's something that I've always looked from the outside into other leagues that will do that kind of thing and really wanted, because from start to finish you will have a narrative. You will see in the Challengers what teams are trying to make it, what teams have made it previously, someone who's struggling all year long. What this means from, well, the start of February basically until December, there will be an overarching narrative, and something that you struggle with in open systems where anybody can run a tournament is keeping track of everything. You'll have hundreds of teams, and even within the top 50 in the same day, you'll have 2 or 3 big tournaments going on. You've got to track all of them and then figure out Team A won this tournament, Team B won this tournament, but you have no way to relate that into where they are in their current trajectory until they get to the same event. Now we have this constant, everybody's got the same goal, everybody's in the same system, and so we can have those conversations week in, week out, and it'll be so much easier for you and I, Anders. It's easy for us to keep track of those things even still. I'm over exaggerating it from our perspective with the open systems. We kind of know where the teams are at, regardless of if it's an esport that we're working in. But for somebody who comes home and watches esports for 2 to 3 hours, your average viewer, it's very hard to keep track of all that data and keep up to date. With a system like this, it is just perfect for us to convey that information quickly, simply, and someone to have a quick update on where everybody's at.
Yeah, exactly. When everyone's rocking the same names for all their events, it gets a lot easier than having a million different organizers trying to put these things together. One of the interesting things that I sort of saw from this is obviously with the current COVID situation, like everything appears like it's going to be online for next year. But they made it seem like for the Masters event and definitely for the Challengers event, those would potentially be offline in a perfect world. And the Challengers event would look a lot like First Strike or Worlds if you follow League of Legends, where that is supposed to be the culminating tournament held in December. And ideally, if the situation gets under control, if travel is less restricted and such, then we could have some international competition coming in next year. There was also a little bit of outcry, I think. I don't know if this just happened. Riot has basically shut down a lot of their esports in like Australia, the Oceanic region in general, where like now in League of Legends, like there's no OS League anymore. And one of the things was that OS teams in this will have qualification paths into North American events. So they don't actually have their own tournaments going down, which is going to be a bit of a bummer. And in an online world, you just can't do that because you're going to be playing with 200 ping.
Yeah, and
Which is too bad.
I don't know how easy that is in the likes of League of Legends, but in a first-person shooter, obviously that is not doable. Like it'll be so difficult to fight, not against the kind of teams, the caliber of teams you're going to be playing against. Maybe they can get through a Challengers, depending on how seeding goes down, all that sort of stuff. Masters, no, it's just not going to happen. So that's a bit of a barrier for sure. You're going to have teams that are at the higher level that have backing by orgs going to be moving to North America for a period of time, similar to what we saw in CS, where South Africa was basically an annexed region where they would have to play on servers miles and miles away, so that they actually ended up moving to North America as well. Because if you're going to choose somewhere, might as well go to the easier region. But I don't know if that's going to be the case then for the Australian teams, how many of them can physically move there. So it definitely sucks, but it's one of those things. It's got to happen.
Yeah, it's one of those things where it is what it is. Well, I'm super pumped for the Champion Tour. That's going to be a lot of fun to try and follow next year and, see if G2 continues to win everything. We have First Strike before that, though, so that'll be exciting. We have a few roster updates. One of the ones in Europe is Rix.gg. If you've heard of them, one of the first teams to sort of invest in Valorant in Europe ended up releasing their roster after not really succeeding in qualifying for First Strike. Say they want to try and re-enter the scene, but that will be with some different players. So if you're a Rix GG fan, sorry guys, better luck next time.
Yeah, I think we knew this was going to be coming for a lot of teams that didn't make it into First Strike. The organizations have been kind of slowly supporting these teams throughout small events, 2.5, 5K, maybe your odd 10K here and there. But due to especially the nature of some of the Ignition events and the bigger 25, 50K events where they were all invite only, or there were very limited spaces for teams to qualify, you end up with a place where they were waiting for greener pastures. They were waiting for the open tournaments. But that meant that when they came around, there was very little room for error. And I think that's where Rix are coming from, that they've been in it for the long haul. They give their team a chance to get into the big event. And when it doesn't happen, they say, listen, we're not getting anything from this relationship. We got to go look somewhere else. It's fair enough. Yeah. Again, one of those things that it really sucks to see, because we saw these guys back in beta, right? Royals, they were banging out teams. They were looking so good. We had some roster changes. Then they weren't quite on the same level, but Rix have been a name that's around those mid-tier tournaments within Europe. And I'm sure the team themselves will stick together, but it is definitely going to be a big hit to the confidence losing their backing.
Yeah, we'll see what ends up happening with them come 2021. Another team in Europe here, Prodigy, one of the teams that qualified for the European First Strike event, has now become orgless. So there you go. Someone pick them up.
I think that's a really smart move, actually, because the whole idea behind Prodigy, it's a talent agency, right? So these guys, Prodigy, they handle players, these guys, a lot of them are from Counter-Strike, and then they've decided to jump in Valorant, have a shot, see how it went. They're a mix, essentially. But they play under the Prodigy banner, obviously, just because they're all signed for it. And most people know that if you want one of the players from Prodigy, you can have them. That's the point. It's an advertisement of, look how good our players are. Do you want some? You want to pay some of them? Now that they're going into the First Strike, I think it's smart to actually change the name, because there will be some maybe bigger names out there, some big organizations that they might not know who Prodigy are. They might see them and presume that they're a team employed by the agency, for advertisement or whatever. Whereas orgless, I think it's pretty universal. You know that they don't have an org and they're looking for one.
It's you want to make it perfectly clear, right? Put the banner up that you're looking for a team. You could have also just renamed to looking for team. That would have also been. I would have taken either of those. Would accomplish the same thing. Now, one bit of First Strike news before we get into the real stuff a little bit later. First Strike Korea is going to be a LAN event. This is super exciting. Of course, everyone knows really hard to hold LAN events currently, and it leads to online play, which, let's face it, not ideal for anyone involved. So if you want to see some sweet offline Valorant action, go ahead and check that out in just like a week or two. I don't know the exact dates on that, but that's gonna be coming up very soon.
Yeah, it's really cool, man. I think, I heard about Japan as well. I'm not 100% sure if that's going down the line, but I heard there was potential for it. And it's something that just the Asian region in general has it more ingrained in their culture to wear masks, to, treat sicknesses in a certain way that I think within the West we don't have. And so it's hard to kind of coax it into people. So they've handled the whole situation globally very, very well. It was impressive, and in a way it just made me want to move over to that side of the world. They're back to lands, they get the excitement, they get the reward, and yeah, we're doing it online, which sucks, but it's better than nothing. Like, at least if you were a conventional sports fan, there was like months with nothing going on. At least we still had competition over that time.
That is very true. And even if you don't have competition, you can always load up a stream, right? Watch your favorite pro. They're going to be playing regardless. So it's always a good time. All right. Well, we are going to step away for just a few minutes Oh, sorry. One more thing before we go. Some more news about rosters here. Rex. Now, this is a bit of an odd one. This sort of came to light within the last week, where Paper Rex is a team from Southeast Asia that basically suspended their entire roster, and they were not very clear with what actually happened here. They just said they were involved with activities against the meaning of fair competition, which to me says cheating in some regards, but they're going to be doing some internal investigation to figure out what exactly went down.
Yeah, I've heard whispers, but I'm not going to bother throwing those out there because it is all just guesswork at the moment and rumors. But the reality is, I massively respect that decision. We've had teams recently in the CS space that did things less than honorably, Forza. But for Paper Rex, I've actually cast these guys. I've gotten to see them work in Southeast Asia a little bit over the last couple of months. So it was really good to see that they've actually got a backbone, right, to turn around, because that's tough. You got a team that you've invested a lot into, and they're going to turn around and cut their ties and start from scratch. Massive respect to Paper Rex for taking that risk and doing what's right.
Yeah, definitely appreciate that. So sorry for debating you all. Now we're actually going to step away. When we return, we're going to be talking First Strike with Fields. It'll be a lot of fun, so stick around.
So who's next?
just a quick little break. That's all we needed before we get into our first strike update. Again, we have so many different tournaments going on all around the world that, you know what, it's hard to focus on all of them, but we're going to be focusing on Europe tonight here. We're going to bring in Fields, the coach for the Purple Cobras, one of those teams that just qualified for first strikes. First of all, Fields, how you doing? You had some really intense matches to end up qualifying, but happy you were able to make it into the tournament.
Yeah, thank you. Yeah, it was good. It was a good tournament for sure. Good games.
Yeah, the final map going 14-12, giving us all, you know, a little bit of excitement too. It was funny too, because on the broadcast, you know, coming in, a lot of people thought you were maybe like underdogs coming in, just shut everyone up on that first map, you know, holding Need More DM to just 4 rounds, I do believe. So what were your sort of takeaways from that match and sort of the qualifiers in general? Do you feel pretty good heading into this tournament?
Yeah, I feel like we've shown ourselves. We've shown what we can do. A lot of teams were like underestimating us. I think we go about our work quietly. We do our stuff in scrims. We have goals. So maybe when teams we scrim don't get as good results in scrims, but we're working on stuff there. So when it matters, our players step up. Like we're definitely a tournament team. For sure. When the pressure gets to us, that's when we play best.
I mean, yeah, you're talking about pressure. You guys came through the qualifier A, right? Lost out in the BO1, went through C again, didn't make it. Then you've got like one last shot. It's Group D, straight into the CD playoffs. Like that's a tough route, man. And then you take a look at the bracket, NIP, possibly into Need More DM. That had to be really, really stressful for you guys taking a look at those brackets. How did you feel? Like, obviously, there's been a lot of criticism along the tournament format for EU, and Riot addressed it, and they said, you know, it won't be like that in the future. But for you guys, when you're in that position, where's the mentality at, right? Like, you have maybe an easy first game, and then 2 of the biggest teams in Europe. How did that feel for you guys?
Well, the first game wasn't actually as easy as it should have been on paper. Like, no disrespect to them, obviously, they're a good team. Yeah. Like, they went, it was Granite, we went 14-12 on split. And we were 12-6 down at something like that. I think it's because they brought out something we didn't prepare against. They played Sky. So we weren't really sure what to do against that at that point. We'd never played against it in scrims. And we sort of got back into our flow again, like when they got 12 rounds, basically. So we pulled back that game, and then I think Nip saw that. They saw we struggled against Granite, and they were thinking, oh, we'll pick split now. But we just brought the confidence from that game, kept the momentum going, and just rolled over them, basically. I think it was 12-4 at one point, but then started to lose it a little bit, but Fancy came out with a big clutch in the end, getting a 3-1 in the last round.
You always love to see that. I'm curious because like when something like a new agent comes out or like these new strategies, like how quickly are you able to like sort of like pinpoint the issues and then like adapt? Is that something your team, you said, were sort of able to do on the fly, or did you need to spend like more time in like coming out of it to work on playing against it?
Yeah, we struggled against it for sure. We on the attack side, it was really hard because they played Breach and Sky. So when they were executing, there was just 6 flashes in our faces all the time. We were blind for the whole execute, and we struggled against it. And on their CT side, though, I think they struggled with our aggression. Like that's what we're kind of known for. You probably saw it on the Need More DM game. That was just pushing a lot. That's what we like to do. We like to play aggressive. And we just went back to that style. We got our confidence back. And
I can't say I'm too surprised really about the whole aggressive stance. I was watching it and I was like, Fancy's having some words here from back in the battalion days. You know, I knew he was a confident guy, but man, you guys were showing it there. I gotta ask, right? Obviously, Purple Cobras, as I said, I know Fancy very well from back in battalion, but as a team, who are your scrim partners? If you're at liberty to say, like, are you scrimming against the likes of your NIPs? Had you played them in the past? Need More DM? Were these teams that you felt somewhat familiar with when you were coming into this bracket, or was this a new territory for you?
We'd played them like a couple weeks before the qualifiers, and we kind of stopped scrimming them as much. I think we played a lot of the like your finest and giants and teams around that sort of area. So we didn't really play any of the top teams in scrims before. We just didn't really want to like show anything too much in scrims. That's the thing, and we're always like working on stuff. So yeah.
Do you think that gave you an advantage then? The fact that obviously you hadn't played too much against them, that they underestimated you? Because at least from my perspective, watching this, and I mean, I was tweeting out before that game even started, saying like that every team in this is solid. Like there's going to be a lot of surprises. Yeah. And I feel like maybe in some of these plays that I was seeing, I saw a different face to your NIPs, to Need More DM, particularly the game I was watching, that they were playing this little bit more confident than I kind of expected them to, knowing the level that you guys could bring.
Yeah, I think that it does play a big factor in it. Like you saw on the first game, we just came out the gates like so confident because that's how we play. We play our aggressive style, and they just couldn't seem to handle it. I guess they didn't really know what was going to happen to them so much. So yeah, it definitely does play into our favour a bit. Teams underestimating us, but I don't know if that's going to be the case anymore. Hopefully, we'll see.
Yeah, I mean, we'll have to see with First Strike coming up very, very shortly. Like, maybe we could talk a little bit about those teams going into that tournament. Of course, the 8 teams that qualified were known. We can go ahead and toss those guys up on the screen right now. G2, Team Liquid, Fun Plus Phoenix, Summon FC, No Panky, Prodigy, who is now, of course, Orgless, you guys, the Purple Cobras, and Team Heretics. And out of that list, like the surprises were like not seeing like a NIP. Of course, you guys ended up being them. They're not joining into the tournament. So what I want to know is sort of like if you remove Purple Cobras from the equation, like pretend they don't exist, like are there teams here that you think can realistically challenge sort of the top end, right? Because a lot of people are going to see all the tournaments that happened earlier in the year and be like, G2 FPX are number 1 and number 2. Do you have like 2 or 3 teams that you think like legitimately have a shot to prove themselves better?
I think Heretics are a scary team to play against. Like, they're so individually talented. Like, every player can pop off and just clutch a round out. Like, every single player there can. So I think they're a team to watch out for. And I think No Penkia as well, like the same sort of thing. Like, every player on their roster is solid. They can all like make plays, and they play well together as a team, both of them. So yeah, I think they're the 2 teams like to watch out for. I think as sort of underdogs. I know a lot of teams have like said Heretics are really strong in scrims, but yeah, it's just one thing being able to do it in scrims and in officials as well.
Yeah, you're just selling our show for us, right? Because we have No Panky playing in the show match later. Just well done. You're doing great work. What do you have to say, Mitch?
I was going to just throw in a quick one here. I saw some mock-ups based on sort of what is accepted as the rough seeding of what the brackets would look like, and I think you guys could probably guess you might be playing G2. There's a chance there, right? They're going to be the highest seed if we're going down that route. You guys are probably the unexpected team within the tournament. It's not good. It's not good to play G2 first round, obviously. Would you guys feel like maybe you've got something up your sleeve in that regard? Because again, as you're saying, you haven't played against them. G2 are used to playing against just the top, 6-7 teams. They only play in closed tournaments for the most part. So do you think maybe you've got something up your sleeve that can catch the Goliaths off guard?
Yeah, I think G2, they're obviously a great team. Like I said before, of everyone on their roster is like insane. But I think again their confidence is so high. Like, coming into a game against like us with Purple Cobras, like, who are they? I think that's where they're gonna fall down, because playing against a team like us, if you like underestimate us for a couple rounds, get that momentum going, that's when we're like really deadly.
Okay.
Yeah,
I
did
was
hear
honestly
there was
hoping
this
to
trick
get.
you could do. I heard there was a trick you could do where you could put like a sage wall on top of a killjoy turret, and you could get some cool angles there, and that might catch them off guard.
Oh no. Oh no! Oh no! Let's not go down that road. As much controversy as there has been around that, thank you, Anders, for bringing that one up. I probably wouldn't do that. Purple Carbers probably wouldn't be the strat for round one. But I have to say though, like honestly, watching you guys, I knew there was something there. I think the fact that you've managed to overcome a really tough road, a lot of pressure, new agent added in, you went all the way down to not only the last chance to get in, but the last qualifier, like a Group D, then into the playoffs, then into a tough bracket. And need more DM, managed to come out on top of that. You're definitely a scary foe. I don't know if you're going to be underestimated by G2. I think if they're, because like it's a massive event, right? They're going to put a lot of effort in.
Yeah,
this could be a really tough game. What I'll say though is that the word I was trying to get the word overrated out of you. I wanted to get that because I've heard some players saying that they think G2 are starting to come to the end of their reign of terror, so to speak, within Europe. But I would love to see someone like you really, really challenge them, really come out there. Because to me, looking at both of your teams, you share a fairly similar idea of how to play the game, which is just confidence, individuality, and just banging out your opponents. And I think in that regard, it's going to be fun to see both of you kind of push each other with the same sort of game style. That's something I'm really excited for.
Yeah, it should be a good game if that's the matchup, for sure.
Who are out of all the teams there, like not looking at G2, like what teams do you feel like you would personally match up best against, like either stylistically or from past experience? Like, are there any teams that you feel like super confident going into?
I'm not really too bothered, to be honest, who we're gonna play against. Like we play our game and we play confident, and then that's just it. Really, we win. We gotta beat the best to be the best, basically. So
I mean, that's the best mindset to have.
In front of us, we're gonna play.
Yeah, I like that. Maybe then we can move on a bit from discussing the teams, because one of the big things that's going to be introduced in First Strike that wasn't in any of these other tournaments is the new map Icebox. Have you guys played a lot on that? Like, have you practiced that? And like, sort of, what are your thoughts on it? And do you subscribe to the Icebox sucks, everyone hates this map line of thought?
Oh yeah, we have played it a little bit in the scrims. We've tested it out. We've tried a few things. I'd say we quite like the map, but me personally, when I'm playing it, I don't like it in my comp games or whatever. But in a team game, in a team environment, I think we all quite like that map. I think it does suit our style of being aggressive, and especially with like the likes of Hugstar and his Rays. He always likes to do these aggressive double satchels in. You probably saw on his Twitter the clip against Nip where he's just double satcheled behind them with the ult and just killed 5 out of spawn. Yeah, we definitely like Icebox and the map for sure, with the double satchels and the aggressive stuff we can do.
I think that's an answer you almost have to give at the same time, though, right? You got to say, "Oh, we love it. We're gonna first pick it if no one bans it." So it's 100% what we're playing. Just get that ban out of the way. But I think what I'll ask you is from a less something that you won't have to worry about giving too much away in terms of your game plan. But for Icebox right now, in the current state that it's in, do you think we're going to see changes coming? And if so, if you could change anything about Icebox, what would it be?
I think there's just too many angles, to be honest. Like, so much stuff to check everywhere you go. Like, it seems like so hard to get any presence really anywhere. So I don't know really what I'd change about it. Just probably less boxes everywhere, like a bit more space, not so much high ground everywhere, and so many angles that you can get on top of.
You're killing me. I love the high ground. Yeah, it's the best part. Jumping on top of yellow. That's what I'm all about. Jet main reporting for duty here, so it makes some sense. Yeah, I mean, we were talking a little bit earlier about map design. Like they did do, we actually mentioned split as like one of those maps where like going into B heaven, you had to like you had to clear both left and right, and they turned it into a slant. So I guess there's some things like that they could do if they wanted to go that route.
Yeah.
I find it interesting though, because like on the map, I feel like one of the big complaints right now is like everyone's talking about like there being a million flashes in the game. And I almost like this map as a counter to that in a sense, where there's like so many angles you have to go in, like you have to like potentially like either waste a few flashes, like get you past some certain angles. So I find that out of all the maps, that's one of the least that I'm like blinded like 4 times in a row, because people are just using utility a little bit more generously. But yeah, I'm interested to see how play sort of develops on that map, and especially like if there are teams that aren't giving it like respect and like aren't putting enough time in it, if that could be a potential weakness for them, or if they just get to veto it whenever they want. Although I guess when we get to best of 5s, that might not be possible.
Yeah, I think it does bring a new aspect to the game. That all that ground, I said they want to move away from sort of the CS like counterpart. So I think that is a good direction to go. I guess bringing the game more in line with what they think it should be played like, I guess.
Let me throw a question your way as regards to your lineups, because I noticed, watching you guys a while back, we would see there's kind of 2 different approaches to Valorant in a way. There's Jet and there's no Jet. That's how Angel put it. And I think looking at you guys, you've swapped, right? You've started to lean in towards that Jet play. Obviously, you're talking about aggression. You're talking about individuals. So that is a kind of lineup that's definitely going to suit your well, as long as one of those players is the one with the operator, that's going to suit a Jet coming into play. But if you could have an agent that was to get buffed up, because I've heard about Brimstone, I've heard about Viper potentially getting buffs coming into the next update post First Strike. Where would you stand on that? Let's talk about those 2 in particular, your Brimstone and your Viper. Do you think we need to see these 2 agents buffed a little bit so that they're played more, or do you think they're good with the rat and teams just don't play them?
I think Viper is really underrated. Like she's probably she is a really good agent. Like her snake bite or poison or whatever it's called.
Yeah,
that is really strong if you can combo that with a lot of things. I saw some people doing shock dart combos with it, and it just does like it insta kills people 180 damage with one shock dart if you land it on top of them. And yeah, like the wall cutting off so many angles and the smoke just delaying the sight for so long. Yeah, I think Viper's in a good place. She might be like one of the best, to be honest. Like when teams like learn how to play her properly, I think that's the key.
Yes.
Like, just
I'm so behind that.
I think in the Champions Tour, Viper's going to be played a lot more for sure.
Yes, this
Brimstone,
is something we've actually been saying. Like for a long time, we've said how Viper, my opinion personally is that teams don't play Viper because they don't want to adjust what they currently have. You've got your agents, you know how to play them. Players are comfortable. I don't know of many people that came up through Valorant, through whatever it was, like the beta stages, playing Viper. It's not an agent that someone's gonna go, oh, I'm a Viper specialist for the most part. So I guess it makes sense, right? Would you agree with that? That's why teams are not playing her before you go back to the Brimstone point, because they don't want to go out of their comfort zone to learn her and all that sort of stuff?
Yeah, I'd think so. And it takes a lot of coordination to play with a Viper, because you've got to manage the toxin screen and everything like that. Your resources are really important, and it's a lot about team play. And if you haven't played with a Viper before, it's going to be hard to play with it. So I think it just needs like time after First Strike. I think teams will be experimenting a lot more with that for sure.
Definitely makes sense. I did ask chat to give me some questions, so I'm just going to read them off to you rapid fire and answer them away. So Doombros asked, your favorite EU player excluding your team?
Ooh. I'd probably say, I think someone like Link, to be honest. Link is a really good player. Like, he's underrated.
Okay.
He's played so many agents for Liquid. He's played like everyone, it seems like the Jet, the Sage, Sova, and he's just flexing around, and he goes quite under the radar, I think, like behind Scream and whatnot. But I think he's like up there, to be honest. He's a really good player in my eyes.
For sure. I like that. I like that a lot. Emil from NIP asked, thoughts about younger players versus older ones?
Oh,
Can boomers play this game?
Yeah, we've got a squad of boomers. Yeah, I think our youngest player is 22, and then we got Fancy and Hugstar 28, Machine is 26 or something. So yeah, we've got a squad of a lot of older players. So I think, yeah, it brings a lot more experience. It's definitely helped me because I'm like a younger coach. I'm only 19. And yeah, it's helped me like learn how to deal with these situations a bit better. Much like I'm helping them, they're helping me as well. So I think older players definitely bring more experience and help with staying calm. I think that's why we're so good in pressure situations. They've been there before. Whereas the younger players won't be able to deal with it as much, probably. Maybe the pressure gets to them a little bit more.
Yeah, that makes sense. I just saw one final question that I think is really cool. Thoughts on which role the IGL is playing and how that might affect playstyle? He's being like smokers, initiators, duelists, that sort of stuff.
Yeah, I think, I don't know, in this game we don't really have a clear in-game leader. I don't think there's room for a clear like in-game leader because there's so much stuff going on. You've got to worry about ultimates and money and all these types of things. There's so much going on. If you have one person doing everything, they don't know like what you can do with each specific agent as much because they haven't really played it as much. The game isn't that old at the moment. So if you get one person IGLing, there's not gonna be as much plays being made or things like this. So I think you have one person making the final call, yeah, but everyone can contribute ideas, I think, to the like fight plan.
Yeah. You want everyone pitching in. I think that makes a lot of sense.
Yeah.
Well, Fields, unfortunately, we have to part ways here, but thank you so much for enlightening all of us and breaking down First Strike. Everyone, you can go follow Fields on Twitter at Fields_OW. When are you going to change your Twitter handle? You're not an Overwatch coach anymore. What is this?
I'm not anymore. No, I need to change that, yeah.
All right.
Yeah,
well, follow him quickly before he changes it. Yeah. Thanks so much, Fields. Have a good night.
Thank you. Bye.
All right. Let's move on to our Valorant wish list. He needs to change his Twitter handle. What's he doing, man? Doesn't make any sense.
That's our wish. That's all of our wishes. Just change your damn Twitter handle.
All right. I love it. Before we get into our actual wishes, let's do our Reddit review here. So we only have a couple things for you all tonight, but the first one is the Ascent bugged window. And this is one I believe, Mitch, that you pulled up for us.
It was actually some of the guys in production that spotted this one out. I hadn't heard of this, which was interesting. I play B, that's why. Sova, give me an Odin, that's where I'm at all day. So this is really interesting to me. So it's like they've put a gigantic plane of glass in there that just gets shattered whenever, not only when you shoot at it, right? This is the interesting thing. Some of these abilities even break it. If you try to heal the glass, you'll actually break it.
Wait, that's even without casting the ability, right? Or... No, that is cast. Okay.
Is it?
Yeah, I think he's just breaking it with it in his hands.
That is odd.
Okay, that's even crazier than I thought it was. But yeah. Effectively, like this wall is just probably like 3 times the size that it actually looks like, and it's just game design, lol. But I was reading the comments in it. They said this has existed since like Ascent was introduced to the game, and it only has just now picked up a lot of traction. So there you go. Use Killjoy's hands to break the glass and but save bullets, because you know they go into the environment, into the landfill. It's really damaging for the environment. We also have a bugged Killjoy ult. Let's see what that is. What's going on here?
This is interesting. So when you ult with Killjoy and then you use the Hunter's Fury inside of it, of course when your opponent uses it inside of it, it breaks it just by shooting out. You don't need to actually shoot for some reason. Now, this one thing I brought this up to, and I won't say who because it's not confirmed yet, but to a very prominent Sova coach. And they made the point that, oh, well, you know, I guess it's not going to be that impactful. But actually, if you think about it, if you use that Sova ult, say you're inside the enemy's Killjoy, normally you'd have to use 2 bursts of it shooting directly at the Killjoy utility itself. But now you can actually clear 2 angles, 2 separate angles that you wouldn't otherwise have cleared for your retake or whatever it is, push into the site, whatever it may be, without having to focus on it itself. You'll break it, and then your third one could be used to clear an angle or follow up on a kill. So it's actually pretty impactful if that doesn't get patched before we see First Strike go in, because hey, if you manage to take 2 extra hits of a Hunter's Fury going into a site, that can literally win you a round.
Yeah, that's a big deal, right? And it's not like it's uncommon to see Sova and Killjoy in the same game. So this is going to happen. And the other thing is, like, you're talking about First Strike, like I memed earlier about like the Sage Wall on top of Killjoy turret, right? As like an exploit that like maybe it wasn't clearly defined as such, but I think now it can be agreed on. Like, this can't even be, you can't even tell teams, hey, don't use Sova ult while you're inside Killjoy.
Yeah.
Like, that's just a natural interaction that you have to do sometimes, even if you're not trying to exploit it. So either this gets patched out, or it's just one of those things that they're like, sorry, Killjoy players, like, you're gonna have to deal with this because it kind of sucks. So that is a big one to bring up. But let's move on to our actual wishes. You guys can type in chat if you want to, get something in the game, and maybe we can include it next week. But for my wish, I wish that Riot would include better new player tools. And this comes from trying to play with some friends that have never played a shooting game before. It's really hard to like teach them the ropes of the game, because like you obviously have like the tutorial you get like right when you join into the game, but like even if it was something as simple as like recommended purchases to like sort of like make economy make more sense to people, other than just buying a, I don't know, stinger every round like some of my friends do, that just sometimes happens, or whether it would be like quick, I know Riot made the video recently which showed a lot of lineups for abilities on Icebox, and that was more of a cinematic video. I think it was a little harder to pull like good information from, but like more clear tutorials like that built into the client, I think would be pretty sweet.
Yeah, I agree. Definitely. I've played with some of the League of Legends players, and well, it doesn't, skills don't transfer over necessarily. Let's put it that way. That does make sense, definitely. For my wish, I went a different route. I went down from the broadcasting perspective. My wish is that we get more information displayed on the screen. And what I mean by that is utility. So when a team is going in for a retake and there is an Omen alive, and maybe there's a Brimstone, maybe you're playing both of those. Does the Brimstone have all 3 smokes? Does he have 1? Does he have 2? Does he have his molly? Does the Omen have paranoia would be my biggest question, because that's obviously, it's the most overpowered flash in the game right now. So if they have that on a retake, all of a sudden that changes the narrative that you're going to make around how they're pushing back into the site, where the positions are based on the utility they have. Currently, the only way we get that information is by flicking through the players. And obviously you don't want to give people an epileptic seizure. So you can't just go quickly through all of them for us to go, he's got this. Okay, cool. Can't do that. Wouldn't quite make sense. So some kind of sidebar, top bar, I don't care where it is, how it works, but just so we can all see, oh, they have this amount of utility left, they have this amount. Cool. Now we know the rules of engagement in this fight.
Yeah, it seems almost criminal that the only ability we're given any information on is the ultimate, right? Like that just can't be correct, And I think a lot like CSGO, you'll see like the bars in like the bottom left and bottom right corner that show like loadouts and HP and whatever utility they have up. Something like that could be like a really quick fix. I guess they'd have to design the UI for it. It wouldn't be that quick, but please get it into my video game. It will make casting it so much easier, because I definitely felt the pain on that. And especially like a lot of the time when you're casting now, you don't actually get an observer slot, right? Because those are pretty coveted positions. So the casters just have to be like on a screen share or a call somewhere. So it's not even like you personally could go flicking through on your own to try and double check what utility is up. So as soon as that gets into the game, it would be absolutely excellent. But I think that does it for our Valorant wish list. And now we can introduce our show match. This one is going to be a whole lot of fun. Every week we're going to do a best of 3 show match. Today we have Wave Esports versus Nolpanky, and we already know our map selection here. So we have Haven, Icebox, and Bind, which means we are guaranteed Icebox. It's not the last one in case there was a 2-0. We're guaranteed to see it, and I'm really hyped to see that one play out.
Yes, me too. And I know I mentioned earlier on, I think it was when we had the crash, so I'm not sure if it got through, but I mentioned how within these teams, there was going to be a situation where, especially for Nolpanky, you've got First Strike coming up. You're not going to be showing your strats. You're not going to see Nolpanky play what they will play in First Strike. What you will see them do, though, is not mess around. It's not come in here and go, hey, screw it. Let's just go shoot some heads, see what happens. This is an opportunity to try your B, C, D plan, whatever it is, however deep into the strat book, how many pages you want to flick by, but somewhere in that notebook is a plan that their coach, their players have thought, wouldn't it be cool if we tried this agent on this map? Wouldn't it be cool if we did this? And now they get to actually try that and see if it's going to be feasible. Again, doubt they'll use it in First Strike, but it's a good opportunity to at least test it out and see how it plays.